Ms. Balfour?
You did the countdown.
Sorry,
I will only not say anything if you invite me.
I apologize. We're having a couple of technical glitches this morning. The June 30th, 2020 school board meeting is now called to order. In consideration of the current health and safety concerns during the COVID-19 pandemic, the school board continues to modify its meeting processes. The educational services facility is closed to the public, but the board meeting audio and video are being live streamed, allowing public viewing through our usual channels. Staff members presenting information will come in at the appropriate portion of the meeting. Board member Cheryl McDougall will be joining us telephonically. Community members who wanted to make comments were asked to register in advance on the district website. Those who registered were called Monday evening and their comments were recorded, limited to 3 minutes each. These comments will be replayed under the public comment section of the agenda. For added transparency, Ms. Escobar will be calling for the board's aye or nay votes for each item requiring a vote. Ms. Escobar, are you prepared for roll call? Would you like me to hold for a moment?
Ms. Balfour, would you put your microphone a little bit closer?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Campbell.
Picking you up.
Better?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. McDougall, are you still with us?
I am still here.
Excellent. Mr. Gibbs, would you like to call roll call while Ms. Escobar works out our technical difficulties?
Sure. Ms. Belford,
Present?
Mr. Susan,
Present.
Ms. McDougall,
Present.
Ms. Deskovich,
Present.
Ms. Campbell.
Present.
Thank you. The board will hold a moment of silent reflection and invite the viewing audience to join us. Thank you. We will now say the Pledge of Allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, at this time, I want to offer my fellow board members and Dr. Mullins the opportunity to recognize students, staff, programs, and community members for the contributions afforded to provide public schools. Ms. Campbell, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. So in cooperation with our wonderful Food and Nutrition Services Department, who continues to just be the amazing people that they are, and now we've got this new plan of how we're going to feed kids in the same way that we're doing plus school sites during summer school and things like that. But one of our community partners, Children's Hunger Project, is continuing to feed students as well on the weekends to meet those needs for the weekend meals. But the United Way, a few weeks ago, joined with them and offered just thousands, really, of books to be passed out along with the meals. And so my girls and I were doing the meal distribution a few weeks ago, and we were able to do the books, and that's a perfect job for them because they're both avid readers. And as the parents and the students were coming through the line, and we said, hey, we have books today too, just the faces that lit up. So thank you, United Way, because it was just wonderful to be able to give that gift, and really we were just the people passing it through. But the kids and the parents, the grandparents, all the ones who went through the line were just so excited to have that book in their hands. So really grateful for their partnership.
Thank you very much. Ms. Deskovich, you want to go next?
Sure. I have two. I had one a minute ago, but I had just remembered also wanted to give a congratulations to Stone Magnet Middle School and Space Coast Junior Senior High School. They've been selected by the state to be part of the Florida Civics and Debate Initiative, which will qualify them for extra funds for teacher development in the area of civics and debate. They'll be able to participate in the program to expand. They'll be able to compete statewide, and it sounds like there's even going to be a national debate if we ever get past COVID, some national debate that they'll be able to participate in also. So I'm excited for them. And then the second one is, it starts with Dr. Stephanie Sullivan, who came to us with the idea, with the problem actually, that our ROTC students that were preparing for military careers were not being counted as career ready by the state in every set of metrics that they evaluate us for. She brought that to us, and then we brought it to our legislative delegation luncheon, if you recall, and Representative Tyler Soroy and Senator Wright ran with the idea and thought it was important and sponsored a bill in each the House and Senate, and the governor signed it this week. So not only will our students in Brevard that are ROTC students preparing for military career now count, we've changed that for the whole state. So great job to Dr. Sullivan for having an idea and bringing it forward into Representative Soroy and Senator Wright for their hard work making it happen.
Thank you very much. Ms. McDougall, would you like to go?
Sure. Now, I have a couple things. One will take a little bit of time, but the first one, kind of short and sweet, and I want to encourage everyone. You know, you're sitting around the home or you're kind of bored. Well, Brevard School Foundation is, along with the organization that sponsors Run the Tide. It's a virtual 5K, and you can sign up at runthetideRace.com, and basically they give you a really cool shirt. I think it's a shirt, or maybe it's a beach towel. I can't remember now. But there's also like a little octopus medal that you get for everyone who participates. And the benefits really will help with the Brevard School Foundation Take Stock Within Children program. So sign up, give you something to do, and help a great organization. So my next one is a little bit long, and that's because I would like to recognize the top 2020 scholars of 2020. And I think there are 20 of them from schools across our district. And so bear with me, and I hope I don't mess up anybody's name. But these are amazing students, and 2020 has been a tough year for a lot of our graduating students. So we have first from Astronaut High School, Elisa Regina, and she's going to be, her career goal is an orthopedic surgeon. You'll be amazed at the career goals that some of our students have. They're really amazing. Then we have Benjamin Yost from Bayside High School, and he wants to be a biochemist. We have Alexandria Foley from Brevard Virtual, who wants to work with animals. Then we have Christina, I hope I say your name right, Tomakari from Cocoa Beach Junior Senior High School, and she wants to get a PhD in biochemistry. And we go to Amber Moore from Cocoa High School, and she wants to do tax law. Then we have Samantha Griffin, Cocoa High School, who wants to become a marine veterinarian and work in a state aquarium. And then my next student is from Merritt Island, and it's Edgewood Junior Senior High School. It's from Edgewood Junior Senior High School. And I'm going to hope I don't mess your name up, Grarish Kenneth. And again, he's from Edgewood, and he cracked me up. He wants to retire or scale back hours as early as possible. So, and then I have from Florida Prep, Natisha Invenko, and she wants to become a diplomat working with the UN. I'm almost done. I'm sorry. But I didn't want to miss out any of these kids because these students are amazing. It's been a tough year, and I just wanted to salute them. We have Brianna Proper from Heritage High, and her career goal is to be a government researcher. We have Jake Vigran from Holy Trinity, producing innovative biotechnology. Lauren Turney from Melbourne Central Catholic School, she wants to be a pediatric neurologist. Then I have Kayla Reed from Melbourne High, who wants to be an OBGYN. We have Rochelle Hawks from Merritt Island High School, and she wants to be a surgeon. You see a theme here. We have a lot of people who want to be in the medical field, which is great. We have Michaela, also known as Midgie, Pania from Odyssey Charter Junior Senior High School, and she is heading off to the Air Force. That's where she wants to go. And then I have, I'm not sure I'm going to say Dylan's name right, at Rockenstock at Palm Bay Magnet High. And again, this is another one. He wants to work at a job that pays 6 figures and have enough time to relax. Then I have Daphne Diaz at Rockledge High, and she wants to be a family physician. We have Maximus Scheiman at Satellite High, who wants to be a biomaterials engineer. Chris Strong from Brevard Adult Community Education, and he would like to work in the IT field. I have Jennifer Oraka Gobira from Space Coast Junior Senior High School, who wants to work in military intelligence or a career in law. I'm almost done. Thank you for your patience. David Lewis from Titusville, and he wants to work with NASA in the aerospace industry. I have Kevin Luciano from Vieira High, who wants to be a chemical engineer working in pharmaceuticals and wants to play the flute in some form of community band. And then my last but not least is Darren Cook from West Shore Junior Senior High School, and she's also amazing, and she wants to design naval destroyers for the military. So my hat's off to all these top scholars in Brevard. Nicely done. Best of luck in your careers. And
Thank
that's
you.
all I have.
Thank you, Ms. McDougall. We appreciate you taking the time to recognize all of those students. Mr. Susan?
I did want to say, Ms. McDougall, you're on to something. The virtual 5K that we held at Vieira High School was significantly better than any of the in-person ones that we did. So you wouldn't believe it, the amount of people that like to go throw that T-shirt on and go run in their own community and consider it a 5K. It's a good way to raise some money for some of the PTOs. I also wanted to give a shout out. You had mentioned the ROTC bill. Tyler Soroy gets a huge shout out for that because there was a big debate up in Tallahassee whether it was going to make it or not, and he stepped up to the plate and was able to push that through one of the education committees, and he continued to push through. So that bill never would have happened had it not been for Tyler's push. I wanted to give a shout out to I was selected on the school board from the School Board Association to be on the COVID response team to make suggestions for all school board members to ask their school districts over what questions should be answered as far as moving forward. It was put on by the members from Orange County, from Hillsborough County, from all across the state. There's about 6 of us, and we put together a document that's going to come out today. I've brought that to Mrs. Moore in Student Services, the rough draft, to give her some of the ideas and get feedback. But I did want to give a shout out to my COVID response team of individuals that have been with me for the last 30 days, meeting twice a week, going through stuff and coming up with solutions based upon their argument, what they see out there. Selena DiFilippo from Sable PTO President, Jennifer Nagy from Suntree PTO Treasurer, who absolutely was amazing because she just figured out a way to get CARES Act money for her PTO. She received $4,000. And my Sable PTO, because of what we did, collaboration, the other PTOs are applying for that same money. Sable should be getting theirs pretty soon. And there's the way that you do it is if you're a not-for-profit that's been impacted, you can apply for it. So they figured that out and they collaborated. So I did want to give Ms. Nagy a big shout out for that. Tara Pagliarino from Family Promise of Brevard, Sherry Lynn Diskin, who's the choice parent with an immune-compromised child. Michael Browd from Heritage CTE. He gave us a lot of the CTE issues that we were dealing with. Lane Keith, she's a Health First medical expert along with a secondary parent. Jonathan Schumann, teacher and also BFT member. Teresa Mitchell, who's Students with Disabilities, a leader in Students with Disabilities organization. Samantha Nazario from 3rd Street Bridge and Hispanic Coalition, and then 3 individuals from Transportation Athletics and Band and Activities. They literally work twice a week through a lot of the issues, and we collaboratively worked with Ms. Moore, and that document should come out in the next couple of days. We're actually finalizing it this morning. So I did want to give a shout out for them to spend the time that they did to try to come together with a response, and they deserve a lot of credit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. Dr. Mullins?
Thank you, Ms. Belford. I want to, the board may recall that the Cape Canaveral Air Force Association annually recognizes teachers as part of their association every year. And this year we have 3 winners. Elementary Teacher of the Year is Miss Jill Whitaker from West Shore Junior Senior High School. Yeah. Yeah, she runs the Whirly Girls, I think, program. I got more announcement on Miss Whitaker in a second. South Brevard Secondary Teacher of the Year is Commander Sergeant, I think I got the rank correct, I apologize if I didn't, James Stadler from Satellite High School. And North Brevard Secondary Teacher of the Year, Miss Tracy Bidovich from Merritt Island High School. But what is especially exciting this year is one of those 3 was selected as the Florida Air Force Association Teacher of the Year, and that is Miss Whitaker. Yeah, so she was notified by the AFA on June 15th, and she was very excited and looking forward to working with the AFA on expanding STEM throughout Brevard. So we will certainly be supporting her and watching her journey.
Is that state of Florida, Doc?
Yeah, the state of Florida.
Is there a
Brevard,
national one that she can go into? She could win it nationally. probably.
she absolutely could. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll find out and let the
We
board
gotta
know.
ask them to do that.
And then last, I'd just like to do give a shout out to some staff that have been working tirelessly, nonstop on preparing Brevard's CARES Act grant application. I shared with the board a couple weeks ago that we qualified for up to $17 million to be shared with Brevard schools, charter schools, and private or non-public schools. But that requires an enormous amount of paperwork, accountability, budget, and so on. Shireen Lukton and Robin Ward have just been absolute champions over the last 10 days to pull together the whole process and do the day-to-day work. But I also must give a shout out to Dr. Sullivan and Ms. Lisinski. Both of them have been working right along with Shireen and Robin to bring it all together, and proud to say that we are submitting our proposal by the end of the day today, which was the deadline, although it was a soft deadline, but if you turn it in after the 30th, then you got to get in line. So just my appreciation to our team for making sure that Brevard is front of the line. So thank you to those folks.
Excellent. I have just a couple. One, I have got to thank our reopening task force and all the work that is going on around that issue. We have obviously a board briefing coming up in a 10 days, something like that. But I don't know how many of the board members have had an opportunity to log onto the site and read the comments that are being provided from students, parents, community members, teachers. Just trying to wrangle all of that information, in my opinion, is a huge undertaking. And admittedly, I have not read all 11,000 plus comments that are on there, but it's been very good for me to have the opportunity to go and read through those and see what our community is thinking. I know we all have a lot of communication with our community members and parents and students on a regular basis, but certainly not at that volume. And so that I have been very appreciative of. And then I want to give a huge shout out to Chris Moore and our student services team. For anyone who was not watching this morning, we had a workshop where Ms. Moore presented our behavior plan for the coming year. And I think this really has the potential to just be life-changing as far as the culture, the energy within our schools, and addressing some of the frustrations that our teachers have talked about for some time with regard to student behavior in schools. And it is a very robust undertaking, but I think it's going to be really great for our schools. So if you didn't get the opportunity to see that this morning, I would encourage our public to go back and watch that workshop, and especially our teachers as well, so that they can see some of the great things that are going to be going on in the schools. And then I would be remiss if I didn't throw out a thank you to our governor for finally signing a budget for us. Not necessarily all of the things that we were hoping for, but I think that we could have definitely been worse off. And so we do finally have a signed budget going into our fiscal year, which starts tomorrow. We did lose a couple of allocations. And we're awaiting some additional information on that, but I think certainly it could have been much worse. So with that, we will move on to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Mullins.
Ms. Belford and members of the board, on this morning's agenda, we have one administrative staff recommendation, 20 consent items, which is a change, and I'll give more information in a moment, 8 action items, and 6 information items. Again, a change that I'll give clarification to in a moment. Additionally, there are 2 items added under board reports and discussion points, as well as an item under superintendent's report. Changes made to the agenda since being released to the public on June 23rd are as follows. A7 on administrative staff recommendations and F8 on meeting minutes have received revisions. Board discussion points on teacher salary legislation and letters to be mailed and the superintendent's report on July campus activity reports were additions, as well as an amendment to move item H35, renew the school board's casualty insurance policies, from information to consent. If you look at that item, it was misplaced in the information section of the agenda when it is actually a consent item. So I wanted to make sure I brought that to full clarity for the board.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Is there any discussion? Ms. Escobar, would you please call for the vote?
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
And Mr. Susan?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Dr. Mullins, will you please tell us about our administrative staff recommendations?
Yes, there are 10 persons under this category for the board's consideration.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Deskovich. Is there any discussion? Ms. Escobar, if you would please call the vote.
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
And Mr. Susan?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. We are now at public comments. As indicated in my opening statement, persons wishing to comment were registered in advance on the
Ms.
district
Belford.
website.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
There was a change, and I don't think it made it in your script. I did have a superintendent's update
Okay.
under presentation before we go to public comment. I apologize.
Okay, then we will back up and move to presentations. Dr. Mullins.
Thank you, Ms. Belford, and members of the board. I wanted to take a few minutes to provide the board as well as our public an update, because a lot has occurred since we were together last, just even 2 weeks ago. The board is certainly aware, the community aware, that the governor announced several education-related initiatives or additional grants that were made available to K-12 education districts across the state, and I wanted to provide the board and our community an update on all of those activities. So I'll take a few minutes and go through our elementary summer school learning programs that includes VPK, GEER, Rising Up Kindergartens, as well as what our elementary summer school health and safety protocols will include, and then I'll close with some additional summer programs at our secondary level. First, Governor DeSantis funded a voluntary pre-K program working with communities' VPK programs to allow in-person voluntary pre-kindergarten. These are for students in anticipation of coming into kindergarten. We have identified a location, Saturn Elementary School, to include 5 students. This isn't necessarily a new initiative. It has been implemented in the past. And 5 students may sound disappointing, but it's actually 1 more student than we had in the program last year. So we're pleased to be able to continue that through funding from the state. It will actually, it began last week, runs Monday through Friday from 7:30 to 2:30, and will actually run through the end of July. And that came from Governor DeSantis' Executive Order 04. Then we move on to the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Act, or GEER. These were dollars that the governor was given through the CARES Act federal stimulus that he allocated and earmarked just for K-12 learning, particularly over the summer. These funds are used to address early literacy skill development. Very pleased to share that we have over 660 students currently registered or RSVP to participate in this program across our 14 elementary schools that include incoming or rising 1st through 4th graders. In addition, 5th and 6th graders, rising 5th and 6th at Endeavor and Mims Elementary will be allowed to participate. This will be beginning July 8th and run through July 30th in anticipation of the school year. The state has allocated up to $1.6 million for this program to include charter and private schools who choose to participate. It is mandatory and required that we provide transportation as well as our breakfast and lunch programs. So those departments are gearing up and getting ready to support our kids and our community for the early literacy skill development opportunity this summer. And that will run, runs from, I believe, 7:30 to 2:30 as well. So it's a full-day program for our kids. Another program that was funded is called Rising Up Kindergartners. It's a grant offered through the Office of Early Learning. It was a grant we had to write actually to the Early Learning Coalition that we submitted yesterday, and it's pending approval. But we've already been notified, or we will be notified within 3 days that we would receive the grant, and it'll allow us to extend even more opportunities to previous VPK students to participate in the GEER program beginning July 8th, running through July 30th. So you can see that we have, normally the month of July is a very quiet month in our schools across the district, but we're actually, to use the DOE's analogy, dimmer switching up our schools returning to full capacity. The summer school health and safety protocols that we will have in place, obviously hand sanitizer will be available in every classroom, on our buses, be very available across our schools. We will continue to encourage frequent hand washing. Teachers will be pausing and sending kids to wash their hands regularly. We have procured touchless thermometers for all of our schools in anticipation of return, and they have those now and will be available to use in our schools. We'll be utilizing a small classroom as well as social distancing for our summer program. Again, I mentioned a grab-and-go breakfast and lunch, and we are encouraging, but face masks will be optional for our students. But our elementary schools aren't the only sites that will be having students reporting to them. In July, we were able to move forward with providing driver's education. We normally provide driver's ed course options for our students over the summer, so we were able to get those in place for 2 9-day sessions in July at the locations you see there. It's a modified or hybrid program where students will, obviously driver's education requires them to do some driving time, so they'll be doing that on our campuses behind the wheel, and then they will also be participating in some remote learning about 3 hours per day. In addition, we were able to reinstate ACT testing at the high schools that you see represented there beginning on July 18th. And we are providing an opportunity for our students to take, for the first time, the DOE is facilitating or accommodating the first administration of the Algebra 1 EOC, which will still be a requirement for students who were in Algebra 1 this year but couldn't take the test because we were closed. So we're beginning an optional administration or access to the test July 13th through the 24th in small groups at all secondary schools. So we've already received some response and feedback that students and families would like to take advantage of that early option for Algebra 1 EOC. And that's the update I have for now. So things are moving quickly, and we're getting things in place to welcome our students back. Well, we have some already here in our early programs, and then July 8th will mark another wave of students who will be coming into our schools.
Dr. Mullins, if I can ask just a quick question on the, on the programs for our, like the Rising Up Kindergartners and the VPK program, are those students who were already, because we have VPK programs in all different kinds of facilities, you know, churches and daycares and around the county, were these sent out, are these just available to VPK students who were in VPK programs?
They, no.
Or
So
there's-
Miss Klein, she's coming to rescue me because that's a layer of detail that admittedly
It's
she
the
knows.
magic door that people who have
That's
answers
right.
walk through.
Miss Klein, come on up.
To answer your question about VPK, it was open to all VPK providers.
Okay.
And we're a VPK provider, so typically we've offered it, and last year, as Dr. Mullins said, we had 4 at Saturn, and this year we have 5. who's taking that up.
Same thing for the Rising Up Kindergarten.
No, Rising Up Kindergarten would be students, yes, it is open to all students, whether they attended our VPK or any VPK. So we are going to house the program, but once we have identified, once we're accepted, then the Office of Early Learning will extend the offer to any student who's been in VPK to register to become part of our Rising Up Kindergarten.
Okay, so we'll be able to put, once that's approved, we can push that out through our
It
normal
will-
channels.
Right, it'll be, the Office of Early Learning will extend the invitation.
Okay.
Because there are criteria that have to be set aside of the students who can attend.
Right. No, I totally understand. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. Any additional questions from any of the board members for Ms. Klein or Dr. Mullins? Ms. McDougall?
I'm good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. We appreciate the update and all the great work that's going on to ensure our students can be successful in the fall. At this point, we are moving on to public comments. As indicated in my opening statement, persons wishing to comment were registered in advance on the district website and were then called and the comments recorded. We will listen to the recorded messages at this time. Later on, we will be holding a public hearing for policies. If anyone called to address those policies, his or her comments would have been heard during this time as well. Consequently, there were no public comments related to the policies for which we will be taking a vote later on. Mr. Francisco.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sue Han, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Facility Services. In consideration of the current health and safety concerns during the COVID-19 emergency, guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as Executive Order 2091 issued by Governor DeSantis, it has been necessary to modify our procedures for public comment. Tonight, your comments will be recorded, and we will play them back under the public comment section of the board meeting tomorrow. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Our moderator will keep track of your time and ask that you conclude your comments when you have reached 3 minutes. Always keep in mind that at all times. Please keep your comments appropriate for our children who may be watching or listening from home. Before speaking, please state your name, the organization you represent, if any, and identify the topic you will be discussing. We won't be answering questions on tonight's call, but our staff will follow up with you if you have a response. Thank you.
All right, and with that, we'll go to Scott. Scott, go ahead with your comment.
Good evening. My name is Scott Rook, and I reside in District 4. During May 26th school board meeting, memorandums of understanding with the Brevard Sheriff were presented for approval for STOMP training and district security personnel to include school resource officers. The posted comment for F-16, the MOU related to district security and SROs with DCSO, was heavily redacted. In the past 2 years, this information has not been so in any of the 11 different SRO MOUs with law enforcement. My questions are, why was the MOU redacted now? What's different? And will all SRO MOUs be redacted going forward? Comparing the last 2 years' MOUs against the current years, it's not difficult to identify some of the missing text. In light of the school board's responsibility to transparency, I fail to understand why the rank of officers assigned to the district office, a major, a lieutenant, and 2 deputy sheriffs, to name a few, are security sensitive, or why the major will, quote, provide consistent direction, coordination, collaboration, and training to all safe school officers and school resource officers, end quote. Provide line supervision and direction for the school security program and security staffing, end quote, needs redaction. Please explain how these generic assignment descriptions require redaction. While some may claim that security is it's easy enough for parents to look around and see a police car and or a uniformed officer at school to know whether an SRO or a school security specialist is assigned. In fact, many BPS schools list their assigned SRO in their faculty directories, so their placement is clearly not security sensitive. In the interest of transparency, parents deserve to know whether they will have a sworn law enforcement officer at their school or a security specialist. For some, this knowledge may be a determining factor. Finally, Understanding how many SRO are provided aids in understanding how the budget supports this piece of DPS spending. With the cost of SROs identified in each MOU, it's easy enough to do simple math to figure out how many officers are provided by each MOU, and as to why it's redacted when the dollar figures are not. I would ask the board to stop the policy of redacting SRO MOUs going forward. It breeds distrust in BPS and the school board in particular. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we're going to go ahead and go to Anthony. Anthony, go ahead with your comment.
My name is Anthony Colucci. I'm the president of the Brevard Federation of Teachers. As you all are aware, the spike in confirmed cases of COVID-19 is schools an extremely difficult proposition. If Brevard County residents do not change their behavior, there is simply no reason why COVID-19 cases will decline in our county. The days until August 10th are ticking away while the number of positivity rates are ticking up. Tuesday afternoon, the County Commission is considering making mask use mandatory in businesses in Brevard. The mandatory use of masks is our only hope for declining COVID cases come August 10th. The decision that the County Commission makes will directly impact the decisions you have to make about reopening. You must implore your County Commission to support mandatory masks. Schools and communities are not islands. Decisions in one sector will affect the spread of COVID in others. While we understand that at the minimum, your reopening plan must include a traditional start with safety measures in place and a continuity of remote learning, we urge you and the Coronavirus Task Force to add options. Options such as staggered scheduling would present a safer environment than a traditional schedule while offering valuable face time with students that remote learning does not. There are several options of staggered schedules and flexible scheduling that this district should be considering. Ultimately, having more than 2 options available will allow the district to be responsive to circumstances. I realize the difficulty of the decisions that this board must make about reopening. The bottom line is these are likely life and death decisions for some in Brevard County. With that said, I'm asking you to err on the side of caution when implementing your plan. Inconvenience, discomfort, or politics must not be the reason why this board chooses to avoid the proper safety measures. If you are asking staff and students to return to campuses, every safety measure available must be put in place. You must ensure the health of our students and staff. As always, feel free to call me if you want to discuss this issue further. Thank you.
This is Sue Ham. I'd like to thank both of our speakers tonight for your comments. As I mentioned earlier, tomorrow morning's board meeting under the public comment section. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.
All right, do any board members wish to respond to any of the speakers for today's public comments?
Can you put together a response to Mr. Rook as to why we redact all those SROs? I don't want to give him direction unless everybody else, but just a follow-up email. I mean, that's standard. We have a standard email as to why we redact things. I think we should just follow up with it. Right. That's me asking. Please don't think that's board direction. Are we okay with that?
I don't think that's board action. I think it's okay to ask our attorney.
Yeah, I mean, it would be the same thing as if he'd send us an email and we asked Mr. Gibbs to respond. I
That's all.
don't have a problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. All right, that takes us to the consent agenda, Dr. Mullins.
There are 20 agenda items under this category.
Thank you, Dr. Mullins. Does any board member wish to pull any item from the consent agenda? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion to accept the consent items as presented.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by, we're going to give that one to Ms. McDougall because there's a time delay.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All right, Ms. Escobar, if you would please call the vote.
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
And Mr. Susan?
Aye.
And the motion passes 5-0. We will move on to the action agenda. Dr. Mullins.
Ms. Belford, members of the board, there are 8 items under this category. The first action is for procurement solicitations.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Is there any discussion? Please vote.
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
And Mr. Susan?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Dr. Mullins?
Next are department school initiated agreements.
What are the wishes of the board?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Is there any discussion? Please vote.
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
And Mr. Susan?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. The next 5 items are in reference to policies. A policies work session was held on May 12th with a rule development workshop on June 16th, which was the public's first opportunity to make comments. Today would be the public's second chance to comment before the board takes action. As I stated earlier, there were no recorded comments regarding any of the policies on this evening's agenda. I will now call for the motion to approve the revisions to Board Policy 5771, Search and Seizure.
Move to approve.
Moved by Ms. Campbell, seconded by Mr. Susan. Any discussion? Ms. Escobar?
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
And Mr. Susan?
Aye.
And the motion passes 5-0. Is there a motion to approve the revisions to Board Policy 7440.01, Protection of Personnel and Property?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Any discussion? Ms. Escobar?
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Susan?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Let's move on to Policy 8406, Reports of Suspicious Activity and Potential Threats to Schools, Facilities, Students, and Employees. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Moved by
Second.
Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. McDougall. Any discussion? Ms. Escobar?
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
And Mr. Susan?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Do I have a motion to approve the revisions to Policy 8410, Crisis Event Intervention and Response?
Move to approve.
Ms. Deskovich moved and seconded by Ms. Campbell. Any discussion? Ms. Escobar?
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
And Mr. Susan?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Next is Board Policy 8410.01 on Critical Incident Response. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Any discussion? Ms. Escobar?
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Susan?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Our last policy this morning is 8420 on emergency evacuations of schools. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Susan, seconded by Ms. Campbell. Any discussion? Ms. Escobar?
Mrs. Belford?
Aye.
Ms. McDougall?
Aye.
Mrs. Deskovich?
Aye.
Mrs. Campbell?
Aye.
Mr. Susan?
Aye.
And the motion passes 5-0. We're now at our information items. There
Oh,
will
Ms. Belford, can I pause? Can you pause for a second? Dr. Mullins, didn't you say we needed to, the first information item actually needs to be, we need to vote on that? The renewal of the casualty insurance, or was it the other way around?
No, you are, but it was in the consent agenda.
Okay.
So you
I'm
already
still
approved the
seeing it
consent.
here. Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're now at our information items. There will be no action on these items this morning. They may be brought back to the board for action at a later time. Does any board member wish to discuss any of the items on the information agenda? Okay, we are now at board member reports and discussion points. Before we move on to our discussion points, does any board member have anything else they would like to report?
I'd like to follow up on that conversation that we had earlier from the workshop.
Okay,
Remember I was saying I'd roll it to the next one?
yes.
One of the issues that I think that we miss when we're talking about the discipline policies that we put into play and some of the back-end support that we have for our students is the why they come to school. And part of that is for the academics, the nurturing, and everything else. But when I taught, one of the things that would get a child through a difficult day at school is some kind of an activity or feeling of belonging. And a lot of that belonging comes through activities, through sports, through some sort of bond from the student to the school. And I think in our environment, we as educators want to try to always try to wrap our head around, how can we support you? How can we do this? How can we do that? But a lot of times it's after the fact, or we're trying to help them mitigate, but we're not helping the before. And that responsibility in many parts is not so much on the schools. And if I can explain a little bit better is that we have some of the most amazing social services through United Way, Family Promise of Brevard. They are so interconnected that if you dial 211, bam, they find you the right information, you get you supported, right? We have, arguably, we just had one of the best presentations on how to deal with discipline in the future, and we're doing our part. And the cities have all these different programs where you have after-school parks and rec and all these other issues that they have, and they have supports inside their housing departments and their developments. And we have Boys and Girls Clubs, and we have DOC, and we have the Meadows. We have all of these organizations that are amazing at what they do, but we don't pull them all together under a house and collaborate and talk about what we can do from beginning to end for our students, how we can collaborate our resources, how we can help drive kids to the DOC, drive kids to the Boys and Girls Club, drive programs to the Meadows, not us, because we ask too much on our shoulders. We put too much on our school system. I think it behooves us to engage our community partners for the support in the community that we need and allow them to do the work, basically. Have Rotarians giving mentorships, have the American Legions and the VFWs working with our ROTCs on the career pathways that they're doing, have a lot of our different organizations, not-for-profits, the churches working with our families. It's not connected the way that we could. So when we're sitting here we listened to Mrs. Moore give that presentation, and I was real quiet, and it just kind of woke me up, and it just, you start trying to get moving on how can we fix these children. And every time one of those children comes into the school, the issue that they're having 9 times out of 10 did not originate inside the classroom, it originated at home. So what are we doing to help the organizations at home develop the issue, fix the issues? We have students that get up every day, and some of the places that we had over the feed and services, one place didn't have a door on a trailer. Another place had a leaky roof. Another place where there's 10 kids in one little room. Those are issues that they bring. That's not our fault. We're trying to do what we can, but we need to engage our community partners, I think, and we need to do a better job as school board members. And I'll tell you what I was going to do is I'm going to create a coalition inside the O'Galley area to do exactly that. And then I hope that through forming the coalition between churches, not-for-profits, the city of Melbourne, and a bunch of the other agencies, maybe we can help those principals in a support. Not to put more work on the teachers, the principals, or our district, but to bring our community into line to support our students and our families in the community better. Because I'll tell you, when I was knocking on those doors, when we were going through those food services and I was finding all those kids over the COVID break, you know who was right behind me? Our social workers, our guidance counselors. They were there. I saw Mr. Sejic, the one from the ALC. He was across at one of my housing developments talking to one of the students. They were there. We just need to pull everybody together. Those same kids that he was going to see also go to the Boys and Girls Club. And I asked them, I said, are we connected? No. So we just need to help connect them, we as school board members. And I'm going to try to create that. And a lot of that happens in Tallahassee or Titusville. You guys do an amazing job up there. It's a big family. I would like to try to recreate that here and then move from there. That was all. It was my spin from what we had a conversation earlier. That's all.
That's a great segue, Mr. Susan, for me to just throw a reminder out to the board members that the community mapping project that we had discussed previously, it's kind of the center focus. Like, that's where we need to get. We're taking baby steps with just identifying our groupings, if you will, at this point. So if you all would not mind trying to send a little reminder for yourself this week. And just to clarify, I'm not asking you to populate, I'm just asking you to identify groupings at this point. And then we can move forward because, Mr. Susan, as you mentioned, one of the things that I am working toward in the North area is a community action coalition. Partly from the book that Dr. Mullins gave to each of you to read, and partly from the book that you mentioned earlier, Ms. Deskovich, the Upstream book. Whereas if we can address some of these issues before they become issues, we save tons of money. So,
Just to clarify, Ms. Belford, you're asking for types of organizations, not specifically the names of the organizations yet.
not yet.
Okay.
Yes, I just want to make sure that we have.
I told you mine in the meeting.
Yes, yes. So
I'll email it to you too.
So I will send out a reminder to you all just to make sure that that you all have had the opportunity to review those and get back to me before we set up an online form for us to begin to populate. And we did receive the information from Dr. Mullins regarding community partners and that sort of thing. So we can, once we have our format set, not to say it won't change as we go, but I think that's a starting point for us, and then we can start populating. So thank you, Mr. Susan, for that passionate advocacy for collaboration. I think it's important as well. Okay, Ms. Campbell, you asked to have teacher salary legislation placed on as a discussion item. Would you like to?
I did, and I think Dr. Mullins, that Ms. Lisinski has a...
Yes, Dr. Theddy is prepared
Dr.
to
Theddy.
come and make a short presentation just with some general information about the teacher allocation legislation. Let's see if she comes out the magic door.
Well, while we're waiting on her, I'd just love to set this up. We're, as Ms. Belford already shared, we're grateful to have a signed budget here the day before, we signed yesterday, the day before the last day of the fiscal year. And I know that the governor had announced that the teacher salary allocation, which was one of his proposals from the fall that the legislature passed back in March, would not be cut, and he signed a bill, I think it was House Bill 641 last week. And so, because of that, there's been a lot of stirrings, and there's some confusion as to how's it going to work out, and just kind of stirs back up some of the positive and the negatives. So on the outset, everybody said, okay, all teacher salaries are going to make at least $47,500 in the state of Florida, and it's not quite that cut and clear. And then a lot of our veteran teachers are saying, great, I'm not going to see a penny of that. So I didn't actually ask for the staff to do any work. I wanted them to not do great, but in typical fashion, they did put together something for us. So I don't know. There's there's some pros and cons, and I think I'm going to let Dr. Thady give kind of the information, and then I'd like if I could have the back for just some talk through some of that. I didn't see in your presentation that you sent us real quick over the weekend. Did you include the amount from the FEFP? Because I have that. I have that here.
I did not.
So the Brevard in the FEFP, because the Florida Education Finance Program when it was passed, that was not changed. So the allocation for Brevard is $12.6 million. But everybody needs to understand that out of that our charter schools will get their proportionate share first, right? So it's not BPS will get $12.6 million, but that is our Brevard total, all the public schools on Brevard number. So then out of that comes what Dr. Theddy is about to share some with us.
So before I even start, I'd like to clarify the 12.6. It's based on projected FTE.
Right.
So that's something to really be very cognizant of, because that projection may change, and if it changes, our allocation will also change. Right. So that's why you did not find it in my presentation, okay. But that is what is published, 12.6.
And just to clarify, that number would change based on if our enrollment drops.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Belford, board members, Dr. Mullins. I just wanted to give you a quick overview of House Bill 641, the teacher salary increase allocation. And by way of setting the stage, just so you know, statewide it's a $500 million allocation with $400 million for raising the minimum base pay for full-time teachers, classroom teachers, clarify classroom teachers, and $100 million to raise the salaries of Florida's veteran teachers and other instructional personnel. The 500 and 400 and 100 are really important because that's where the 80-20 comes in that you hear about, but is not specifically delineated in the statute. This bill repeals the former Best and Brightest, so that program is gone as a result of this. It amends section 1011.61 and creates that categorical called teacher salary increase allocation. Of that allocation, 80% plus any remaining funds, if it doesn't take 80% to get where we need to be, although we have not determined where we'll be at this point, We have to use it as specified in the statute 1011.62, which is the section of statute that deals with the funding for the operation of schools. And I do want to repeat again that our funding is based on projected enrollment, so that 12.6 allocation minus the charter school's proportionate share is based on our enrollment for next year. In the allocation of funds, let me go back up one. Eligible instructional staff making less or earning less than $47,500. The purpose is to increase the minimum base salary to at least $47,500 or the maximum amount possible, which is an important caveat, for the following instructional staff: full-time K-12 classroom teachers, as defined on the next slide, and certified pre-K teachers funded in the FEFP. Those pre-K teachers who are funded in the FEFP are pre-K ESE teachers. This does not include those funded through Head Start or Title I programs. Based on numbers from last year, from 2019-20, so these are estimates only and they're just for our planning purposes, there were 2,043 classroom teachers as defined in the statute with a base salary under $47,500. There are 278 non-classroom teachers with a base salary under $47,500 and 2,509 instructional personnel with base salaries above $47,500. Keep in mind, those are based on last year. They are subject to change, but it's just a place to start. The definition of classroom teacher in statute 1012.012A is a staff member assigned to the professional activity of instructing students in courses in classroom situations, including basic instruction, exceptional student education, career education, and adult education. Another really important caveat here is, even though the statute speaks to substitutes in that particular section, this House bill does not include substitute teachers. What's the definition of minimum base pay? The definition of minimum base pay is the lowest annual salary reported on the salary schedule for a full-time classroom teacher. And the interpretation of the base pay is that it's the base salary plus the pay for performance differentials, but not including advanced degree supplements. The first 80%, in step one, the first 80% of the allocation must be used to raise the base salary for classroom teachers to be as close to $47,500 as possible. If there are funds left over in that first 80%, the remaining funds may be used to provide salary increases for full-time classroom teachers as defined on the previous slide, funded in the FEFP, who do not receive an increase or who received an increase less than 2% under the initial parameters that I talked about just a minute ago. And then followed by other instructional personnel as defined in 1012.01(2) B through D, and I'll talk a little bit about who those people are in just a minute. The teachers who are not included in Part A, that classroom teacher piece, those are our certified school counselors, our school social workers, our media specialists, primary specialists, instructional trainers, etc. The second part of the allocation is the 20%, and that's the full-time classroom teachers and certified pre-K teachers, and I just probably got ahead of myself and talked about this already, who are funded by the FEFP who did not receive an increase or received an increase less than 2%. And again, you can see the definition of who those are. This is taken directly from the statute. The the House Bill 641 requires us to maintain a minimum base salary. We are not to reduce that salary in any subsequent year unless authorized in the General Appropriations Act. We have to develop a salary distribution plan pursuant to the bill, and we have to submit that to the school board for approval. And then we have an approval process or a submittal process through the state. By October 1st, we have to submit our plan, including the charter school plans, to the DOE. We will have to bring our plan to you for approval prior to the October 1st deadline. Charter schools will have to bring their plan to their charter school governing boards prior to the October 1st deadline, but we will submit ours and charter schools together. The submittal includes the amount of the increase to the minimum base salary, our salary schedule from the prior fiscal year, and I didn't have it on here, but our salary schedule for this fiscal year as well. By February 1st, the DOE is going to submit a statewide report to the governor, the president of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House. And then by August 1st, 2021, we have to provide a final report to the DOE of expenditures for this fiscal year, for the fiscal year 2021. So that's just a really brief overview of the language. And here to take any questions. And I have Mrs. Lisinski in the back also, if there are any financial questions too.
Good, thank you. Thank you for putting all that together. I think it's important to, I mean, people could even go, you can go online and Google this bill, and it's now law, and you can read through it, but it's some of it is kind of clear as mud. But thank you for going through that. I just think it's really important because I want people to understand that this is not going to happen with your first paycheck out of the gate. Because one, it's my understanding, it has to go through bargaining. One of the things that we have as part of our contract with our teachers union is that starting pay schedule, and that is something that it also has to be a piece of that. So just thinking about positives and negatives, I just, first of all, even though it in a way it's been kind of a controversial bill, I have to say, considering our current crisis with the COVID pandemic, I was so happy to see that this $500 million pot of money didn't get pushed off to next year, because it very easily could. I mean, the governor had to cut $1 billion. There's half of it right there. He could have just said, hey, let's cut this. And so that he did, we did have a priority in education, even though it may not be exactly how we wanted it, that the priority was still there. So I'm grateful, first of all, to have the $500 million when it really could have easily said, hey, you know what, we really want to do this, but we'll do it next year. No, we're going to do it now. Another thing that's positive about this is our teachers have been crying out for us to recognize, for our legislature to realize we need salary, not bonuses, and we are doing away with Best and Brightest, who every now and then I'll see someone say, oh, I wanted that bonus program, but salary goes towards retirement, it goes towards, it's not taxed the same as heavily as bonuses, and so we have that. And even though this is not the way that I ever would have imagined it happening, I have been wanting us to get our starting salary over $40,000 since before I got on the board, and we're going to get over $40,000. So it helps with our recruiting, which leaves us with fewer vacancies, fewer classes to cover. It helps just all of that we've been working on. And I am happy to see, even though it doesn't include all of our pre-K teachers, it's a step in the right direction of including some of them, and that has really been a point of contention in a lot of legislation. Now, there's also some problems that we're going to have to work through. One, it does create an inequity for our veteran teachers, who some of them may be making $47,501. I don't know if we have anybody exact at that number, but I'm like, it would really be a bummer if you're just, you're right there at that number. And, I understand, and I so appreciate the frustration for people who, we're going to create this creates a compression issue. And it also is, again, one more instance of how the definition of classroom teacher is causing problems in the progress that we're trying to make, because then we have our media specialists, our counselors, our social workers, our school psychologists, and all our resource teachers, our coaches, whose work is so valuable and important, yet it seems when things like this come out that it's not. And so I know that I have on my task list for the next in the next few weeks to personally contact each of our legislative members from our delegation and just thank them for the work that they did, but just continue to put a bug in their ear that we've got to rewrite some of this so that we don't keep coming back to this, and especially when I think about our counselors and our social workers and our psychologists, there's never been a greater emphasis on mental health than there have been in the last couple years, and yet here we are with all the great work that we talked about in our workshop this morning on behavior and, and discipline and how we're going to wrap our arms around our students in a different way, and yet they don't have the same recognition. And that's a problem. And we have such an important, especially right now with the pandemic and trying to catch kids up from, the way we had to do learning in this last quarter. And we need our media specialists and our reading coaches and all those people to be able to, and yet here we are, once again, not recognizing them in the same way. And I say we, I mean, as a state, our legislature. And so I just want to, us to continue to advocate with our wonderful delegation. I love our delegation. I think they've done a lot of great things, but just continue to put that bug in their ear that we need to fix that piece that is discriminatory towards pre-K, discriminatory towards these other instructional employees who may not have a class of 18 to 25 assigned to them each period, but that are doing great work, and it really it makes things difficult. So again, I'm really excited for this, that it happened, because it's showing it that we're moving in the right direction, but there's still a lot of work to do, and we as school board members have great opportunities, and we have a great delegation who listens to us, and so we continue to work on that. But I thank you for putting that out there, and I just wanted to make sure we address it, because the stirrings are happening. So that's all I have, Dr. Hay. Thank you.
Any other board members have comments, questions for Dr. Theddy? Ms. Deskovich?
I don't have a question for Dr. Theddy, but I just wanted to build on what Ms. Campbell said. I really appreciated your comments, especially calling out the guidance counselors and social workers and the work we need to do there. But I just wanted to add an emphasis there also with our media specialists, because I received a couple calls this week after the signing from our elementary media specialists who do have classrooms. They may not have a roster, but 6, 7 classes, and then their one planning period, they have to run a library. Like, that's even more work sometimes. So somehow we've got to communicate that and get that fixed at a higher level than us, because they're going to leave because they can now hop over and potentially make thousands more with, doing, and the media specialists I talk to love their job. They love the environment they're in. It's the same for our social workers and our guidance counselors. And they are certified teachers, so they easily could just hop ship and go to a classroom. And especially with us looking at reducing the budget with their assistants, they're going to have even more work and yet be on the lower end of the scale. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Theddy.
Following, I'm sorry, Mr. Susan, did you want to speak for you?
Just if we can get a consistent message, right now is the time for us to hit our legislators. And I'll just tell you, one of the things with pre-K, we're doing a statewide initiative with all pre-K teachers throughout the state, educating all the legislators in each one of the prospective districts. And one of the issues that we have found is that our legislators are so busy with everything else inside the budget that it's difficult for them to understand the minutia of what we do. So I would say let's get a little white paper out real quick and start and go and allow our voices of our employees, because it's not only the media specialists, it's our transportation folks, it's everybody, right? Education needs more funding. So how that looks and how we move forward, I'm on board. I'm ready. Thank you. That's all.
Just a point of clarification, Dr. Theddy, could you give me those numbers again when you threw out the number of employees in the different categories? Understanding it's from last year and may change, but...
I sure can. Hold on just a second.
Thank you.
Based on 2019, 2020 numbers and salaries from that year, there were 2,043 classroom teachers as defined in section 1012.012A with a base salary under $47,500. There were 278 non-classroom teachers with a base salary under $47,500. And there are 2,509 instructional personnel with base salaries above $47,500, all based on last year's numbers, all subject to change.
Okay, thank you. And with regard to what Ms. Deskovich brought up with the media assistants, understanding that all of this has to be bargained, right? But under Best and Brightest, we were able to find a way to include our media assistants who had a roster of students.
Media specialists.
I'm sorry, media specialists who had a roster of students assigned to them, like they clearly had a classroom of students they were serving. Is the same flexibility does it apply in the statutory language for this teacher salary allocation, or have they closed that loop?
I don't have that kind of guidance from the state yet.
Okay, very good. And then you said we have to submit our plan by October 1st?
That's correct.
And I'm guessing that all of that has to be bargained prior to it being sent to the state, or?
So there are a couple of different things there. The allocation, and directly out of the language in line 260 of House Bill 641, although district school boards and charter school governing boards are not precluded from bargaining over wages, the teacher salary increase allocation must be used solely to comply with the requirements of that section. So we have to submit the plan that meets the requirements of this section. The other pieces will be separate from that.
Okay, thank you very much for that clarification.
So just to clarify what you said, because our count, official count, doesn't happen until October after this first date. So the plan will not have any numbers on it, or they'll be very preliminary.
They will be preliminary because we have to submit before October FTE.
Okay.
Good catch.
Ms.
Yes.
Belford, so does the plan have to be approved before we can, do we have to be settled with BFT on that to submit the plan? Or
We
what's
have to have the plan based on this allocation approved by you prior to the October 1st deadline for submittal to the state.
So by October 1st, you have to figure it out with BFT, and you all have to bring it to us, and we have to vote on
bring
it?
this portion of the, because remember, this is a very specific allocation, and it's very specifically identified. So that plan is about this. It's not about all of the other pieces that go into negotiations each
So
year.
technically, negotiations with BFT could run past October, but as long as this portion of it is settled, it seems like it's kind of a package deal. There's going to be give and take, and it's going to...
We are required to have approved by you this part of the plan.
Thank you, ma'am.
Does anyone else have any additional questions for Dr. Theddy? Thank you so much, Dr. Theddy,
You're
for
welcome.
very quickly putting together some information for us. We appreciate you. Mr. Susan, I believe you had requested discussion about letters.
Yeah, it could have been a discussion point in a board workshop or whatever it is, but currently we have our funding every year that we talk about we had a discussion over professional development and all these other things. And at the end of the year, sometimes we have some money fall to the bottom line, but one of the issues that we have this year is today is the last day before the budget sort of starts sinking in. And I took the opportunity to say that if we were able to take the remaining funds that are left over and allocate also for sending out letters to graduates, to individuals inside our community as board members to support our schools, I wanted to be able to do that because there's a lot of times where I'll come here and I'll write a couple of letters to people that are doing stuff in the community and I just bring my stamps in and I go. The problem with that is that, like, I don't know, like the mayor of West Melbourne, Hal Rose, he said, hey, Matt, I'd like to send a thank you out to all of your graduates. So that's great. So he requested the scope and he got it. Melbourne did the same thing. County commissioners did the same thing. We don't have that opportunity to do it. So what I'd like to do is take the remaining funds that we have left over from Deskovich and everybody else and be able to utilize that for postage. And just like we do a lot of the other accounts that we already set precedent, we transfer back and forth, we have rollovers, we have everything else, we could utilize it for that. So what I would like to do is roll the existing funds that we have left over and utilize portions of that for postage if any of us want to. So.
Ms. Escobar, what is the date, do you recall, of we have a discussion around the board budget scheduled coming up this coming month, right? 14th of July?
Correct.
Okay.
We maybe want to ask Ms. Lisinski, I don't know about the possibility of keeping the dollars that are left in there.
Because we'll
Yeah.
be in the new fiscal year left over.
Well,
we do it every year, we roll
Yeah,
millions of dollars over, so this is not setting precedent in any way.
Yeah, just for the public that may be watching, there's not millions of dollars rolling over
No.
in our
particular
actual board
Right.
account. There's
only a couple
a few
thousand.
$1,000s
Yep.
maximum. Yeah, that we're discussing here.
So I will say, Mr. Susan, I feel like that's going to be part of the overall conversation that we're having on July 14th as to how dollars are allocated as well as what we should do with any dollars that were left in the board budget from this current fiscal year. So is this something that you feel needs to have action taken on it today, or can we discuss that on the 14th?
It's not, yeah, it's not something that absolutely has to be done today. You know what I mean? It's not. I would like to start the process of every other elected board in this county sends letters to their constituents, lets their students, their people, everybody know. And they have a little fund for that. And I think that if we don't travel, if we don't do the things that we have a budget for, then we should be able to utilize those funds for those other things. And I think that also gives us a connection to our community and you know, it's a goodwill. So that was all. That was the main reason behind it.
Okay.
So if you guys want to think about it and bring it back on the 14th, that's fine with me.
Okay, super, thank you. Any other board members have any discussion points before we move on to Dr. Mullins? Ms. McDougall, you still doing good out there? And
I am still doing good. Yes, thank you.
excellent. All right, Dr. Mullins, do you have a superintendent's report?
Actually, we moved that up to the beginning, so I don't have anything else.
All right, there being no further business, I will call this meeting adjourned. Have a great day.